Now, if you have been keeping up with my content, you know there is a playlist on my channel that has been going through the history of the ninja, or rather, the shinobi. And this video right here on my ninja playlist will be the second video explaining the 3 great ninja manuals. But going back just so you know, the first video in this playlist explains all that you need to know about the infamous history of the ninja, going from the reality to the modern day myth. And the second video explains the outline of the famous ninja manual known as the Bansenshukai. So if you haven't seen those videos, I do highly recommend that you go check them out, preferably before you watch this one, but that's up to you. So today's video will focus on the ninja scroll known as the Shinobi Hiden, sometimes called the Ninpiden. And if this is something that you actually want to read for yourself, you can actually find a complete translation of the book called The Secret Traditions of the Shinobi, Hattori Hanzo's Shinobi Hiden and Other Ninja Scrolls. That's right, this one actually does have a lot to do with Hattori Hanzo, the most famous example we have of a real historical shinobi, and I know a lot of you do like hearing about him. But before we get any further, I do need to mention, just like the rest of the videos in this series, I'm working alongside historical researcher and author Antony Cummins, who has spent many years putting together a team of Japanese specialists to help bring these historical manuals to Western readers. Seriously, if it was not for Antony and his team, we probably would not have complete translations of a lot of these texts. So I do recommend you go check his channel out and give him a subscribe if you haven't already. I will also put some links to some of his books and other social media down in the description below. So with that said, before we dive into the history of the text, there are just a few things you should know. First is that in Japanese history, the ninja were correctly known as Shinobi no Mono, or just Shinobi, so from this point on in the video I will use those terms. Second is, this manual is famously known as the Ninpiden, but the correct title is actually Shinobi Hiden, so I will use that. And lastly, yes, once again, the author is Hattori Hanzo, and we will talk about that. Alright, with that covered, first of all, let's look at the title. The title is made up of 3 ideograms, or Chinese characters, which literally mean Shinobi Secret Sayings, translated to the secret teachings of the Shinobi. And as already said, there are 2 ways this is read. The first is Shinobi Hiden, the second is Ninpiden. However, current historical research says that the Shinobi version is probably more correct. But unsurprisingly, there are different versions of this manual, which is also something we saw with the Bansenshukai. And because of this, Antony Cummins, while in Japan, set out to find all possible versions he could, managing to track down 3 copies. The Okimori version, the Nagata version, and the Kokugakuin version. To date, only these 3 copies are open to the public, but there may well be more copies within closed or private collections. The complete translation is available in English as stated before. Now let's get into the makeup of the manual and the complex issue of dating it. Traditionally, the Shinobi Hiden is thought to be a collection of 4 volumes or chapters put together. But when Antony found the Nagata version, his team found a 5th and final chapter which was previously quote-unquote lost. This makes the Shinobi Hiden a 5 short volume collection of shinobi skills, which appear to have been put together at some point. Which then brings us to the issue of dating it. What you should know is that the date of the manual is not a single date. It was not written down in one go as a complete book, and we usually call each section in them volumes, but they are more like chapters. However, the word chapter implies a single book written in a sequence, therefore, here they are considered short volumes. Some of the volumes have different dates, which tell us that there was actually a compilation put together at some point. However, before we look at the date for each volume, you should understand the difference between the written date and the transcription date. Of course, the printing press as we know it came to Japan in later years, so most books in Japan were either printed with the technique of woodblock printing or they were hand-copied page by page. This is known as transcribing, and each one is a transcription. This is very important, because most of the original manuals in Japan are missing, and what is left to us are later copies or transcriptions. This is exactly the case with the Shinobi Hiden. We do not have the original copy of the manual, but we do have various transcriptions. This can cause absolute havoc with dating, so bear that in mind while I tell you the dates of each volume. Volume 1 is dated as written in 1655, but is transcribed in 1727 and 1731. Volume 2 has no date at all. Volume 3 has the date of 1560, but transcribed in 1733. Volume 4 is simply dated as 1560. And Volume 5 appears to have no date given, but was transcribed in 1646, 1723, 1733, and 1843. I did say the dating was complicated. I hope I'm not confusing anyone. And while it may appear complex, we can basically ignore the transcription dates and look at either the written date or the author of the manual to see if they are all the same person. What seems to be the case is that for volumes 2, 3, 4, and 5 were written by a man called Hattori Hanzo in the year 1560, remembering that volume 2 has no date, and that in 1655 a descendant of his named Hattori Minobe Saburo wrote an introduction to the manual and renamed all the volumes 1 through 5 to give the scroll order. But before we move on to the name Hattori Hanzo, you should be aware that there appears to be some issues with the Japanese research community. The topic of shinobi research is only very new in Japan. Mie University only started the first academic approach to it in 2013. Before that, the subject was seen as pretty shady, because in the 20th century, many outlandish and sometimes outright fictional books about the shinobi sold themselves as historical. This has created over 100 years of a tangled mess in Japanese research to untie, as the Japanese are very cautious about the subject. This means that a lot of times things will get disputed in case it is proven wrong later, often to save reputation. This has resulted in many early dates of ninja documents to be unfairly called out and simply put in the category of wrong just to be on the safe side. The Shinobi Hiden is a major victim of this. The date of 1560 is a pretty great and early date for a shinobi text. It is like finding a newly minted or rare coin, so automatically it is kind of considered as, well, dubious. But the important thing to know is that there is no foundation for actually dismissing this date. In fact, Antony considers the date to be accurate, but admits that a specialist needs to be called in, something which has not happened yet. So as a base, consider that 1560 is correct, but may be disproven in the end. Alright, now on to the part that I know you have all been waiting for. On to Hattori Hanzo. I would be pretty surprised if you found your way to this video without knowing who Hattori Hanzo is, as his name is found everywhere from movies to TV shows to video games. I imagine most of you might simply know of him from things like Kill Bill, Samurai Warriors, or Total War Shogun 2. The real Hattori Hanzo, as often depicted, was actually a Sengoku period war master under the command of Tokugawa Ieyasu, and was known as the Devil Hanzo because of his devilish tactics. The name Hattori Hanzo is of course broken apart from the family name and given name, the family name being Hattori and the given name being Hanzo. What is interesting is that the name Hanzo was one that was passed down to the family heads. Therefore, there is actually more than one Hattori Hanzo. In fact, we know of at least 3. So let's take a look at these 3 names. The first Hattori Hanzo was a man from Iga who served the Matsudaira clan of Mikawa. He was the father of the famous Devil Hanzo, the general of Tokugawa Ieyasu. It is of course the Hattori Hanzo that we know as the Devil Hanzo that is the one we think of all the time. He is the most famous of the Hattori Hanzos. However, his son, also known as Hattori Hanzo, was a bit of a petulant child, where even his men rebelled against him because he was overbearing as a leader. So of these 3 Hanzos, which one wrote the Shinobi Hiden? Well, it could be that none of these men did, but in that case it would be from a different and unknown Hattori family from Iga, because the manual is about Iga shinobi, so it is assumed that it is this main Hattori family. If we take the date of 1560 as solid, then Devil Hanzo was only around 18 years old, so likely his father Hattori Hanzo I wrote it and passed it down to other students of his shinobi style. If Devil Hanzo did write it, then he wrote it at a young age and also passed it down to his students. So let us round everything up. The Shinobi Hiden is also known as the Ninpiden. It appears to have been written in 2 phases. The first phase in 1560 by either Hattori Hanzo I or Hattori Hanzo II, and then an introduction was added in 1655 to bind it together, and the volumes were renamed. By the 20th century, this manual was published and presented to the public, where it joined the Bansenshukai and the Shoninki to form what is today known as the Three Great Ninja Manuals. Please keep that in mind because the next ninja video that Antony and I are making will be on the topic of the Shoninki. This will round out our series going through the Three Great Ninja Manuals. But now that we've talked about the history of the manual and a bit about Hattori Hanzo, let's actually dive into what the Shinobi Hiden tells us. Once again, in terms of terminology, the correct way to say the famous word ninjutsu is actually shinobi no jutsu, and this manual is a collection of shinobi no jutsu, primarily from the lands of Iga, but the text also mentions their neighbors, Koka, and many of the families intermarried in that region. First off, Volume 1. Volume 1, which was the introduction given by Hattori Saburo, first gives an account of how the skills of shinobi were first recorded in ancient China, but that they were called by different names. And of course how later they came to Japan, but more specifically how they came to Iga, and how the warriors of Iga and Koka defeated the defenders of Sawayama Castle and created their own line of shinobi no jutsu. After this, Volume 1 has a tantalizing yet mysterious list of shinobi skills, where it gives us the names of each of the skills, but none of the actual content. This is both frustrating and exciting, with terms like turret collapsing fire, the sound amplifier, goblin powder, and esoteric mantras. While some of these skills are lost and some are not, their names are collected here for researchers to study for years to come. Next up, Volume 2. Volume 2 is a short introduction to shinobi tools and contains some fascinating but mysterious illustrations for some of the more strange pieces of shinobi equipment, signed by Hattori Hanzo, yet without any given date, such as the fire-carrying tools, capsules which carry embers so that shinobi can start fires and burn down enemy castles, or lightweight torches for moving through dark mountains or woods. Basic tools such as the door key, which are angled sections of metal which allows for a shinobi to probe inside of a locked storehouse and open the locks from the inside. Or even a machete which has a hardened blade for cutting through undergrowth, allowing a shinobi to build a camp or even use it as a weapon. There are famous tools such as the caltrop used to stop enemies who are chasing them, or far more mysterious tools such as the sound amplifier for listening through walls. There are also large fire rockets for burning down enemy positions, but also kind of life jacket systems for moving through dangerous waters. The strangest of all is the underwater diving helmet, which has yet to be tested in reality. With a little bit of imagination, Volume 2 shows us exactly what it was like to be a shinobi in the Sengoku period, and it is not what you would expect. This is a world of moving through enemy lands, using fire, traveling through water, and burning down enemy camps. It is a dark and sinister image of some hardened frontline advanced troops. Of course, after this is Volume 3. Volume 3 continues with the theme of shinobi tools, but this time, instead of images and building instructions, it gives us descriptions of their use. It tells us of handheld instruments made of grass which were used when passing by sleeping people, small lights which light up a dark enemy room, attack torches which were thrown into enemy compounds, burglary tools such as saws, gimlets, and chisels which were all used under the cover of darkness and sound so that the shinobi can break into an enemy position. It tells us of how bows and arrows would be used for night raids when shinobi would launch a surprise attack on the enemy, but also of ropes which were used for shinobi to measure distances and make calculations. It even gets into ladders of rope which were used by shinobi to climb up and down. It explains how to open doors in silence and also how to store shinobi tools. But best of all, it describes how to blow up a bridge when enemies are crossing it. That is a lot of stuff to go through. But of course after that is Volume 4, which is actually the greatest and by far the best volume of the Shinobi Hiden. This volume is the most open and easy to understand. It contains the secret heart of the shinobi infiltration skills and outlines the skills of Iga and Koka down to their core. The following list will help you understand those skills better. It explains how to infiltrate both common folk but also men of the high cloth, and high-ranking samurai warriors. It teaches which people to target for better or more internal information, and how to search for people who have grown to hate their own lord and are willing to become traitors. It shows how to feed false information to enemy spies and to take from them what you need. It also tells how a shinobi should evaluate the overall picture of an enemy target area and compare what is fake with what is truth, and how to build a detailed picture to form a correct intelligence report. It also explains how a shinobi should match the speech and look of the people they are impersonating, and how to even disguise themselves as a scarecrow. It teaches how to take advantage of the wind and pass through checkpoints, to use the rain to gain advantage or use the trees to hide. It highlights the best places to hide to gain information, such as bridges and crossing points, and even how to let loose horses so that an agent can take advantage of the confusion. When anyone moves through an area in the wilderness, the wildlife changes. Things like frogs stop making sounds, dogs bark. It even talks about how the insects change their behavior when a shinobi is inside a target house, and how to help trick the inhabitants into thinking the shinobi himself is just another aspect of the wildlife. These are all things which the Shinobi Hiden teaches how to deal with. Overall, it is volume 4 which allows the Shinobi Hiden to be ranked as one of the greatest shinobi manuals in history, because it is fully open on the secrets of Iga and Koka skills, and was only intended for shinobi students of old Japan. After that is Volume 5. Volume 5 returns to the style of Mysterious. It is a collection of 2 separate lists. One list for shinobi in times of peace, and one list for shinobi in times of war. In times of peace, a shinobi should focus on high-ranking officials, how to arrange marriages between allies, how to not create favorites for the lord, and the loyalty of a samurai lord's clan. While in times of war, the shinobi should focus on Sun Tzu's 5 types of spies, castles and fortifications, capturing enemies, signal fires, explosives, medicines and powders, and life as a special forces branch of an army. At the end, Volume 5 leaves the reader with an overall understanding of what is the nature of the shinobi, if a little imagination and focus is used in the reading. In conclusion, the Shinobi Hiden is an amazing look at the world of the shinobi of old Japan. It may or may not have been written by the famous Hattori Hanzo, but it also of course could have been written by his father or even another branch of the family. In the best case scenario, it is a true record of Sengoku period espionage. Yet in the worst case scenario, it is an early Edo period record from a family who were famous as shinobi. Both are still great outcomes though. For anyone wishing to complete their understanding of the world of the samurai, then understanding the espionage branch of samurai warfare is a part which must be explored. Once again, this video and this series on the history of the ninja is not done by me alone, as I am working alongside Antony Cummins. He and his research team continue to search Japan for scrolls and documentation to help us better understand the world of the shinobi, and I strongly suggest you check out more of his content. As stated before, I will not only be linking where you can get your hands on a copy of the Shinobi Hiden, but also some of Antony's other great books along with his YouTube channel, website, and Instagram. Please go check him and his work out. And remember, the next video Antony and I make together on our series of the ninja will be on the topic of the Shoninki, the final of the 3 great ninja manuals. So please keep an eye out for that. But of course, as always, thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell if you enjoyed this video and found it to be most informative.